Hello and welcome back. The next stage of making your Christmas wreath is going to be to prepare the foliage before we add it to the moss wreath base. So in your kits you'll have received a real selection of seasonal greenery. The base of the wreath is going to be made from this lovely locally grown Nordman fir, so we'll be cutting this down in a moment. We've also put in some lovely green ivy, so you've got some wispy movement, some really soft Scotch pine, and a selection of eucalyptus. So we have gunny eye, which is a lovely glaucous grey blue, some cinerea, which can be cut down into lots of different units, some lovely broadleaf poplars, and also some coloured parviflora. This one's had a touch of red dye added to the stems just to give it a little bit of festive colour. It will come off slightly on your hands, but it will wash off. So good selection of eucalyptus. Some of the wraps might have got a bit of pistache in, some might have got some rosemary or some mimosa. So it'll be a real selection to add detail to your wreaths. So if I just put this to one side a moment and we'll prepare the Christmas tree, the Nordman fir. So what you want to be doing is breaking down the branch into units. What we're aiming for is between 12 and 15 palm size bundles of foliage to go on the wreath. You can use everything that we sent you. So if you cut off the side pieces to begin with your secateurs, as you see, you get a lot of greenery. And that one's the compost bin. So that would be fine at this size. You don't need to break that one down anymore. But something longer like this, I take off the side pieces. And for something long like this, I would probably cut it here, and then I've got a big piece and then another smaller piece to add in. So build your greenery. That one's too wide, so snip. And keep these little pieces because they're really good for filling in the sides of your wreath. So again, side pieces off, the top piece, and we'll keep that one as well. There's really, other than the main central stem, there's very little waste. That piece is fine. It's a little big, so we'll take that one out and have a couple of shorter pieces. So this Christmas tree is grown by Charlotte Hamilton. She has a beautiful flower farm up at Highworth. If you ever fancy ordering some DIY flowers, so Charlotte through the summer will do DIY buckets. It's at the site where the Rose Farm shop and animal park is, so if you've got little ones, then quite a nice trip out for them as well. Fabulous farm shop. We get some groceries from there, lovely meat selection reared on the farm, and also really good sausage rolls. So we've broken down our foliage. Going to have a look at the ivy now. So the ivy's just going to bring a different green to the mix, and quite a nice glossy texture. This is a bit harder to cut down because it's a bit more wiggly, but you will be able to get pieces. So that's the sort of size we're looking for. This one's a little long. Yeah. So I quite like these pieces that are quite tendrily. I think it'll make the wreath look really natural. A few more longer pieces, and that one's great as it is. So with the eucalyptus, again, we're looking to make smaller pieces. Now this is your luxury foliage, so it's going to be on the top layer of your wreath. So it makes sense to cut this down quite selectively. So for this piece of gunnii, I'm going to make a snip here. And then that's going to be a piece that can go on the front of my wreath. And with these pieces, I think I'm going to actually take out the side stems. So I've got some shorter pieces of that lovely glaucous blue to add in. With the cinerea, such a lovely foliage this. I use it a lot in wedding work. So what I would do is snip at the top of a leaf base. So I think with this one I'm probably going to go in there. So I'm taking out the top, get as close to that leaf node without cutting the leaf as you can. You get a nice top, and then again there, and then again here. The bottom leaves can sometimes be a little bit worn, so pick off any that you don't like the look of, but then you've got 4 more pieces to add into the wreath. With the red parviflora, I want to sprinkle this around the wreath. So again, I think I'm going to take out these side pieces, have a longer piece, and then use these side branches to add splashes of colour. Poplars, I'm just going to cut down into a couple of units, again just to add another shape. And the pistache is fine as it is. The lovely Scots pine, it's just so tactile. What I think we'll do with this one is give ourselves a couple of shorter units. Again, this is going to be used on the surface of the wreath, so really visible. And another. Super. So we'll soon be ready to get going. At this stage, I would wipe down your workbench and get ready to add the foliage. Okay, so hopefully you've cut up all of your foliage now, and you've got a selection on your work surface. So now to get your moss wreath base back out. So here's the one we made earlier with the hanging loop at the top. So I'm going to tie the twine on and secure that tightly with a double knot, and then get ready to start adding foliage. So I'm going to work clockwise because I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, you'll probably find it easier to work anti-clockwise. And I am going to talk about being at 12 o'clock, being at 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock as we work our way around the wreath. The other thing I'm going to talk about is how to angle your stems to get a really nice full wreath. So I'll talk about the greenery, the cut ends of the greenery pointing to the inside edge or to the outside edge, and I'll show you that, and we'll do some close-ups so you can see how we get that lovely full shape. So strings tied on, wreath base in front of me with the hanging loop at the top. I'm going to create the first bunch in my hand. So again, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to build the little posy in my left hand. So I'm going to have a couple of pieces of Christmas tree. Bright piece of ivy, I think I'm going to put that on top. And then to start my wreath off, I think I'm going to have that lovely bright blue cinerea. Then for the inside edge, I'm going to find a couple of my small pieces of the Christmas tree and just bring them in so you've really got a fan shape developing in your hand. So in terms of overall length, I've got quite small hands, but I would say that's sort of 6-7 inches. So that's your first bunch, and you're going to lay it down flat onto the wreath so that the stems are pointing over towards 11 o'clock and the cut ends are pointing towards 1 o'clock. So I've put it flat on the surface just underneath my hanging hook. So it tends to work best if you hold it with one hand and then take the string in your free hand and you're going to wrap it over the bottom stem, the bottom of the stems. You can see here I'm wrapping it over, going round the back, giving it a pull and going once more round. Then leave your string back out to the side again so you can find it. Okay, then make up my next bunch in my hand. So some nice Christmas tree pieces. A smaller bit of ivy. Yeah, piece of ivy. I'm going to use a different style of foliage now. I think I'm going to put some of the Scotch pine in. Now if some of your stems are a bit long, then you can just give them a little cut down. So this second bunch is going to go on so it overlaps the cut ends of the first bunch, and we're going to slightly angle these stems towards the inside edge. So what happens then is that the ends of your foliage go slightly more outside the wreath, creating that full look. Definitely worth putting a little piece of Christmas tree on that inside edge so you get some nice coverage there. Hold it firmly, string round through the middle, and once again. Now it's not on so tight that you can't wiggle and position it in a way that you find pleasing. There we go. Again, making a fan shape in my hand, using different sorts of foliage. I'm going to go in for a bit of this lovely red this time. A bit of the Scotch pine. So with this third bunch, I'm going to angle the stems so they're facing slightly outwards. So again, it's coming down, covering the string and the ends of the previous one. But the cut ends are slightly towards the outside edge. Go round with your string once, twice. Go. So I've got some small pieces of fur on that inside edge. I want to be able to see the hole in the middle, so I'm not having too many big pieces covering the middle, but I do want lots of movement and outline on that outside edge. I'll show you one more, and this time we'll put a teasel in. So a couple of pieces of the fur. Nice sprig of ivy. Let's have a piece of the gunny eye this time. So we put some teasels from the hedgerow in the kits. They are quite spiky, they're not my most favourite thing, so handle with care, but you do need to cut them down so you've got this sort of size unit, but I would definitely then place that on the top, possibly heading towards the outside edge. So for this fourth bunch, I'm already nearly round to 3 o'clock, so I'm making good progress around the wreath. So again, the last bunch, the third bunch, was slightly pointing outwards. So this one is going to slightly angle inwards, covering the stems of the last bunch and wrap around. Good. So things that can go wrong. Occasionally, people on the workshops end up with a big hole in their wreath, and it's because they've changed direction completely. So if you end up turning the bunch around and pushing it on this way, as you can see, you're going to end up with a big hole. So if that happens to you, unwind until the point where you change direction and correct it. So the long ends, the finishing points of the foliage are always in the same direction. The only thing we're changing is the slight angle that we're putting the cut stems, just to give us that shape and movement. Okay, so hopefully now you've managed to work your way around most of the wreath, using up the foliage, so a handful of pine, some ivy, some of your eucalyptus, the teasel going in every 2 or 3 bunches, altering the slight direction of the pointed ends to give you that nice full shape. So I'm now probably at about 9 o'clock. So here's my hanging point here. So I'm nearly there. I reckon I've probably got 2, maybe 3 more bunches to put in. Now the final few bunches are a little bit more fiddly, so do take your time to get these to lie flat. But they should be definitely the same fullness as your previous bunches of foliage. You don't want it to end on a skinny note. So a little bunch here. My last stems were pointing in, so these are going to slightly angle out. So what you want to do is either find a friend or use one hand to lift up the first bunch that you placed on, and then we're taking our string through the middle, carefully getting it under that first bunch of foliage, but catching that bunch that I just put in. As you can see, there's still quite a lot of space left in there, so I'm definitely going to need another bunch to finish this. So round twice, and then let's find some nice pieces of long foliage to finish. That's a nice piece. Nice bright ivy, and then I've got a piece of gunny eye and a nice floppy bit of that. Oh, I've got a teasel left as well. Right, you can go around the back. So final bunch. Again, just gently lift up the ends of that first one and try and work out. I think I'm going to go for the inside edge there. So push that in. Yeah. And then you are going to need to use both hands to get the string under the first bunch and over the last one. I say, take your time on this, because this is what will give you a really nice professional finish to your wreath. Oh, we have an escapee. I'll give him a little push in. Now, some people ask me why we don't actually push the foliage into the moss base. You can do that, but it wouldn't stay on with that alone. You would need to go around with the string as well. So what the moss is doing is creating a moist base. Greenery will absorb moisture through its leaves as well as the stem, so you are giving it some moisture just by laying it on that moss. So I'm just going to check my design. I've got a cut end showing there, so I'm just going to have a little wiggle. Yeah, a few pieces escaping there. So to finish off, take your string out and be quite generous. So, no scissors, a good long length. If you've got it too short, you'll be fighting to get it to finish. So similar technique to the one we used to tie off the moss base. So we've got a long cut length. I'm going to make a loop. Then I'm going to thread my loop under the first bunch of foliage, over the last and into the middle. Turn my wreath over, so I've got my loop and I've got my cut ends of string. Then I'm going to thread that cut end through the loop and wiggle it until it's tight. Then gently turn my wreath over, and I'm going to use this loose end to weave through some of these pieces of string that we've been wrapping around the moss and the foliage, and really just weaving it through just to secure everything before tying it off. No fancy knots here, good old granny knots are good enough. Just do 2 or 3 just to make sure it's really secure. We don't want your wreath coming undone in a false nightingale. So as you can see, I finish right at the top. So what I would do next is give it a spritz, dust off any of the moss bits that's taken a ride on the ivy. And put my wreath to one side while I clear up the workbench ready to add the decorations.